Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going to completely dismantle everything you think you know about early human survival. We tend to picture ancient humanity just sort of fending for themselves in the dark, utterly helpless against disease and injury until modern science swooped in to save the day. But actually, the truth is far stranger, wildly more impressive, and honestly kind of disturbing. Let's get right into it.
Think about it. If you wake up today with a splitting headache, what's your first move? You probably pop an ibuprofen, chug a glass of water, and move on. The whole thing takes what, maybe 45 seconds? But I want you to imagine waking up with that exact same headache 50,000 years ago. No pills, no doctor. You definitely don't have the internet to self-diagnose yourself with 17 rare diseases. It's just you, that blinding pain, and a cave full of people who are just as clueless as you are about what's pounding inside your skull. Yet, somehow, we survived for 99.9% of human history without modern medicine, beating genuinely ridiculous odds. So how on earth did they do it?
Which brings us to Section 1, the first pharmacists, observing, remembering, and surviving.
To figure out how the very first medical traditions began, way before human civilization was even a thing, we have to look at the massive, honestly mind-blowing scale of our medical journey. We didn't just jump straight from primitive grunting to the 1860s when germ theory finally showed up. No way. 2 million years ago, early hominids were likely just relying on basic biological instincts. Think of how a dog instinctively licks a wound to clean it. Fast forward to 60,000 years ago, and we actually have hard evidence from Neanderthal teeth showing they were eating specific plants with known medicinal properties, like yarrow and chamomile, to self-medicate. And then, 31,000 years ago, we see something truly jaw-dropping in Borneo, which we're going to talk about in just a sec.
But hold on. How did we figure out which plants to actually use in the first place? Well, we see the exact same behaviors in chimpanzees today. When they get sick, they instinctually seek out very specific non-food plants. They'll actually swallow rough, prickly leaves entirely whole just to physically scrape parasites off their intestinal walls. Or they'll chew on this super bitter pith that's packed with compounds completely toxic to those specific parasites. And look, they aren't doing this for a tasty snack. This is a biological default. If chimps have this ingrained ability to basically use nature's pharmacy, our early ancestors absolutely had it too.
But here's the absolute game changer. Humanity's unique superpower wasn't just noticing what made us feel better, it was our ability to share that information across generations. Think about it. An animal eats a plant, feels better, and sure, that's a useful behavior for that one animal. But a human eats a plant, feels better, and then tells their entire tribe about it. That right there is the definitive, literal origin of a medical tradition.
Moving on to Section 2, Stone Age surgeons. Ice Age operations with stone tools. This next discovery completely shattered everything we thought early humans were capable of. 31,000. I just really want to linger on this massive number for a second. In 2023, archaeologists in Borneo uncovered a human skeleton dating back 31,000 years that was missing its left leg. But here's the crazy part. It wasn't ripped off by an animal or lost to decay. It had been surgically amputated. The cut was clean, it was precise, and most importantly, the bone had actually regrown around the wound. Really think about the stakes here. This means that someone in the Stone Age, right in the middle of the Ice Age, looked at a severely damaged leg, decided it had to come off to save the person's life, performed the surgery using sharpened stones, stopped the massive bleeding, fought off the inevitable infection, and the patient actually lived for years afterward. Insane, right?
And get this, it wasn't just a one-off miracle. Across archaeological sites worldwide, we find widespread evidence of trepanation. Now, that's a surgical procedure where they literally remove a piece of the skull, presumably to relieve dangerous pressure or treat severe head trauma. The truly staggering fact about this whole thing is the bone regrowth. It proves that a huge number of these patients actually survived. Let that sink in. They were successfully doing brain surgery with flint tools, and the patients were waking up and just going about their daily lives.
Section 3. Right results, wrong theories. Empiricism before science.
So how exactly did they pull off these incredible surgical and medicinal feats without knowing the first thing about microscopic science? Well, there's a grand irony to ancient medicine. Look, nobody on Earth had a clue about germs or bacteria until the 1860s. Instead, they relied on totally incorrect theories, like the Greek four humors or these abstract concepts of vital energy and doshas. The underlying models were completely entirely wrong, but because they were supreme empiricists, they relied heavily on trial and error. They just kept what worked and ruthlessly tossed out what didn't. The theory was totally off, but the empirical results? Spot on.
Let's look at how this builds into an actual pharmaceutical toolkit. Take the ancient Egyptians, for example. They used honey for wound care. Today, modern science tells us honey is highly antimicrobial, has a low pH, and naturally produces hydrogen peroxide. They also slap preparations containing mold onto infected wounds, literally thousands of years before Alexander Fleming ever discovered penicillin. We even have records of them feeding just massive, steady quantities of garlic to pyramid workers specifically to stave off infections. And yet, today we know garlic has very real antibacterial properties. They were out there successfully using primitive antibiotics without having the slightest clue what an antibiotic actually was.
Section 4. Survival through community care, the biological reality of the social fabric.
As deeply impressive as those individual remedies are, we've got to look at the bigger picture here. Individual humans, we are just not built to survive alone. We don't have claws, we have zero natural armor, and we definitely aren't winning any foot races against a predator. Our greatest medical asset was always each other. Survival in the ancient world was fundamentally a collective project. When you got sick or injured, you survived because specialized healers, the shamans, the midwives, the herbalists, they held the entire community's accumulated knowledge. The social fabric itself was literally a form of medicine, keeping the most vulnerable members alive just long enough for their bodies to heal.
But, look, we really have to ground this narrative in some harsh reality. As incredible as their ingenuity was, ancient medicine failed all the time, and when it failed catastrophically. In a lot of ancient societies, roughly half of all children born never made it to their 5th birthday. Childbirth, too, was incredibly dangerous. You're looking at maternal mortality rates ranging from 1 to 3% per birth. And when you factor in a lifetime of having multiple children, that creates a massive compounding risk.
See, ancient healers were incredibly clever at managing certain conditions, like a fever. They intuited that a fever was actually a useful immune response, so they managed it carefully, keeping the patient hydrated, comfortable, giving them herbal support, basically giving the body's immune system the absolute best chance to win the fight. But against catastrophic systemic failures, things like sepsis, they were completely, absolutely helpless. Without modern antibiotics or intensive care units, sepsis was almost universally a death sentence. It was just this constant daily negotiation with a human body that was simultaneously incredibly resilient, yet startlingly fragile.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Ancient Roots of Modern Medicine, the Unbroken Chain.
It turns out modern pharmacology is quite literally just mining tens of thousands of years of ancient empirical observation. Aspirin, derived straight from willow bark, which has been used for millennia for pain relief. Morphine, pulled directly from the opium poppy. What about artemisinin, one of our most effective modern malaria treatments? That's derived from sweet wormwood, a staple that's been used in Chinese medicine for over 2,000 years. Digoxin for heart failure? Isolated from the foxglove plant used by everyday British folk healers. We didn't just invent these things from scratch in some pristine vacuum. We basically just refined what our ancestors bled and died to figure out first.
Which leaves me with a final question for you. When you took a pill this morning, did you realize you were actually just completing a 60,000-year-old experiment? Think about it. You are standing at the very end of this unbroken chain of human beings, from the Neanderthal chewing on bitter pith in a dark cave to the Egyptian applying a honey-soaked dressing, all the way to the modern lab researcher. They did everything the absolute hard way first. They survived through thousands of years of grueling trial and error so that today, we just don't have to. I really hope this explainer changed the way you look at your medicine cabinet. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.